Welcome to today's Fearless Authority Roundtable with your crew here at the Conscious Leadership Network. Thank you very much for joining us. If you're catching us live or catching the replay, we're really glad that you are here, and please say hello wherever you're finding this. We'd love to hear from you. So today, in today's Fearless Authority Fearless Authority Roundtable, we have formulated a new direction and a new focus on how we want to structure these moving forward to kind of really create a cohesive story as we really dive into what Fearless Authority means to us. And we are going to be following a map of 12 pillars that really build a holistic life, because we are approaching Fearless Authority from life standpoint, from business standpoint, and everything around that whole holistic lifestyle. And so each month we will be choosing a different pillar and wrapping that around into what it means to us in terms of Fearless Authority and how we've arrived at some of these realizations, insights, transformations, and all that magical stuff. And so this roundtable, we will be diving into Fearless Authority and spirituality. Spirituality, it's a big topic. So first, I want to introduce myself and let everyone introduce themselves. My name is Jeremy Lassman. As you can see below, I'm the professor of passion. I am a high-performance coach who helps overloaded entrepreneurs focus their stressed mind, find bigger opportunities for innovation, and help them go bolder with their voice of leadership. I struggled and suffered growing up with high sensitivity. I'm a highly sensitive person. It provided its own source of anxiety and overwhelmed, chaotic mindsets. I remember not being able to meditate for 5 minutes because the noise in my mind was just like, could barely sit still. Because I have a hyper mind and a wild imagination. And so for me, the transformation and really getting to the core of how I've really mastered that for myself. I've invented imagination technology. I used to be a SpaceX technologist, and now I'm hoping to found the Conscious Leadership Network with all these brilliant individuals. And I look forward to everything that we create here. So Palace, why don't you take it up from here and introduce yourself?
Hi guys, I'm Palace Dame, and I'm an integrative health practitioner, also the CEO of Authority Establishment and founder of the Conscious Leadership Network. And I am a coach, practitioner, guide to help people, work with people, create a holistically balanced life through food and lifestyle, if we're looking kind of really high level. I also am working on certification in Body Talk, which is clinical integrative energy medicine, as well as soul detective work, which gets down to the root causes of spirituality and shamanic practices. So for what I do, I work with individuals from really high level to really root cause of spiritual and energetic disturbances in their lives. And my story is a long one and a complicated one, but it's really boils down to chronic illness, Lyme disease, the root causes that got me sick in the first place, and how to what I've had to do to unpack all of the things, the energetic frequencies, the disease in my body from Lyme disease, the reasons that it's there, just through the food, through lifestyle, through quantum medicine, through soul retrieval, through so much work. And I show up where I am now to help others really shortcut through all the craziness that I had to, so that they can thrive and be healthy and happy and connected in the most divine sense of who they are.
Love it.
It's beautiful.
Nice.
So who's next, Mr. Jeremy?
Xavier.
All right. What's happening? Well, thank you, Jeremy. My name is Xavier Smith, a.k.a. Mr. XL Smith, a.k.a. Coach X. I've got a lot of aliases that people go and call me, but I only have one mission, I've been sent here to impact, inspire, and improve the lives of others on a daily basis. And most are wondering at this point how I get to do that. Well, I originally started with helping people get better at the game of life through personal training. Then I dove a little bit deeper and I got myself a certification in nutrition because I had my own heart attack when I was the age of 29.
Wow.
And then I went deeper even further and got certified as a life coach with Tony Robbins. And all that I did was because I wanted to help people go from a life of mediocrity to a life of excellence. And the beautiful thing about it is you get to choose what excellence looks like in your life, and I can be your guide from the side. That's me in a nutshell, because I've lived my own life of mediocrity, and I'm still in the process of becoming the best version of myself through my own experiences. And I just personally can't wait to have you just join us all, because we all have some superpowers that we can't wait to share with you when you join us. And that's me in a nutshell. Now it's up for Mallory.
Thank you for the nice introduction, X. I appreciate it. And real quick, I have to say, heart attack at 29, that is insane, because I'm sitting here in my chair and I'm like, I'm 28 and I can't imagine what that would be. So,
Right.
So my name is Mallory Weber. I am a coach who essentially I just help people who need rapid healing and transformation to step into their highest selves, to embody abundance at all levels. So it can be from a monetary perspective, an energetic aspect, even just from really being able to feel that they have joy, happiness, and purpose within their lives. And the way that I do that is through integrating all sorts of different practices, anywhere from physical, tangible tools like essential oils or crystals, or even like sacred geometry, and taking it into like from an ancient perspective all the way up into a modern day perspective, and really just fine tuning it, because with healing is non-linear, and for everybody to be able to heal, we all need different things. And what may work for one person might not work for another. Or for example, like Jeremy was saying with meditation, someone may start with meditation and be very comfortable from there, but may also need additional tools to move beyond that. And where that actually stemmed from with me is I have grown up and had a very traumatic life. When I say very traumatic, I honestly, when people hear my full story, a lot of people say that that's an understatement. They can't imagine some of the things that I've gone through. And, it had started very, very young for me. And so being able to move through my own life, having these different tools and practices, etc., was what had led me to being able to be formally certified, trained in different modalities and practices, and actually wanting to assist others to be able to heal through those processes as well.
Love it. You had me at non-linear, Mallory.
Yes. I think we all are here. Awesome. Very good. So I would I love to start out very simply, and I would love to hear from each of you how you define spirituality, because it's a very subjective thing, and I would love to hear from your guys' take before we get into like fearless authority and all of that. What is spirituality? And we'll start with Palace again.
Gosh, spirituality. It's definitely a non-linear thing. To me, spirituality is that the deeper I'm going with my practice, the deeper I'm going with learning about myself and who I am not and what I am not. It's the connection and reconnection, I guess, of plugging back into the divinity, the consciousness that is unnameable, right? If we can name something, if we can put a label on it, it's something that's tangible, and it's something, it's outside of us. If we can label it, it's outside of us. And spirituality to me is unpacking the labels and going deeper and deeper into what some people might feel is a place of getting lost, but it's really a place of being found, of that true connection of love, of joy, of that everything in life, no matter what it is that we're doing, like to learn our soul lessons, to learn our life lessons, it comes down to forgiving those around us, forgiving ourselves, unpacking those belief systems, and moving towards the divinity of who we innately are. It's not really quantifiable. It's so much different than that for me, but it fills the heart, it fills the mind. It's light. It's spirituality is connecting to the pure divinity of light, the frequency of light,
yes,
and beyond.
Xavier, I have a spin on this question for you.
Okay.
How did you define spirituality before your heart attack?
Ooh.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yes, sir. All right, so this is kind of easy for me because before the heart attack, let me first of all educate everyone that might be watching this. I grew up in the church. I grew up, and the first thing the doctor did to me was smack me on my butt with a Bible. So you can understand it was better for me to tell you when the days that I was not at church, which might have been Tuesday. Other than that, I spent all my time in the church learning from my grandfather, who was a pastor. So before the heart attack, I had learned a lot about the blueprint on religion. However, that incident, the heart attack, plus a few other incidences in my life really helped me guide my inner self, because I believe that in the way I define spirituality now is all about, if I were to break it down into simple terms, it's all about alignment with your inner self, the inner self that is all knowing, the inner self that knows all before anything happens. We are a piece of all that created all these worlds. We have that piece within us. And so for me, before the heart attack, it was all about the rituals of being a certain religion, which was a little different than spirit, which is that little inner voice that always speaks to you and tells you some things that you probably, your ego doesn't want to do, but you know you should do. For example, when I got on the phone and forgave my parents after 17 years of being incarcerated, not having one foot, never stepped a foot in a jail cell. The incarceration I'm talking about, my friends, is the incarceration of my mind. So before that, yeah, it was more about just learning how to be a good religious person and kind of ignoring my spirit. And now it's kind of the other way around. The heart attack showed me a few lessons, and I started learning how to listen to my inner self and just be and allow instead of stress and force. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah. I'd like to interject. Like for me, it kind of comes from that same 0 point of kind of meeting yourself where you're at and your own just mortality, I guess. And it sets us off into the dark night of the soul, where we're completely lost. And if we choose to make the journey, if we choose to pick up those granular pieces and start putting them back together to then recreate the next version of ourselves, that's when we really show up with the true tools, the gifts, the insight, the wisdom to pay it forward. Like I think most people that wind up in a true healing capacity don't generally wind up there, waking up one day going, I want to be a healer. Some people do, not everybody, but I think the bulk of us, it comes from that dark night of the soul, and then showing back up in the world going, there's so much I can pay forward, and there's so much good and so much heart opening and so many ways we can circumvent that hard challenge that we went to bring people into the joy and passion right out of the gates, because that's what it's all about. Like you don't have to break to show up where we are. I mean, that's a catalyst for many of us, but it ultimately comes down to the joy and the passion, right? And if we can just plug somebody into that professor of passion, right? Like that's how we kick it off. That's how we get things going.
Yes. Yeah. And so, Mallory, how did you decide to go into the spirituality after that? You were discussing the really traumatic life and all of that.
It actually didn't come into play at the level that it is now until I had actually separated from my son's father. Obviously, any separation is going to be difficult, but when you have a child involved, it makes it that much more difficult. And, during that point in time, I actually was connected with a phenomenal person who did a Reiki session for me. And that's actually where it had started. I had never really been a very spiritual person. I had actually really shied away from spirituality more for the religious perspective that has been brought up. For me, it was kind of heavily indoctrinated within my family and, pushed on me. And I didn't align or agree with all of the aspects that I was encouraged to support and believe in. And after having that Reiki session, within that session, there was so much that had come up for me that aligned with me truly, that stimulated me to actually want to go and become Reiki certified for myself and then for my son. I wanted to be able to have that energy healing for my child in addition, because think about the separation of a 2.5-year-old and split families. So I had split families growing up, and I had witnessed my sister go through, separation of my parents and, well, my mom and her father. And from that aspect, it had made me want to be a better parent, to be able to support and help my son. And from there, it just grew and expanded so quickly that it's almost really difficult for me to describe it, because in the past in my life, there was, integration of like crystals or oils or, from a small perspective of spirituality, but I never actually was like taught that was an aspect of spirituality. And so really the defining nature of the spiritual perspective didn't really take place until that formalization through Reiki. And from there, like I said, it was completely exponential. It was like as if somebody cracked me open and I had exploded from there, as far as what my purpose was to be, how I was going to show up for other people, how my energy could serve myself and those around me. And from there, take it to the perspective of expanding humanity.
Love that.
Yeah. My parents divorced when I was 8 years old, so I can definitely understand the separation there. So for me, the arrival to spirituality was like the extreme opposite end of the spectrum, in that for me, I was forced to go to Hebrew school. I was raised culturally Jewish, and since it was forced, I never felt any connection to spirit, the spirit of religion. And then coupled that with the negativity that I was kind of raised with, if you want to look at it like that, I didn't even believe in school spirit. Like, and I felt I was a loner, and so I didn't really connect at all with the tribal school spirit thing growing up. And when I had that like awakening of like second guessing that worldview, I came face to face with the opposite end of the spectrum, which I call it's the neurotic judgments, the skepticism, cynicism, and pessimism, as like the webbed off complexity of that negativity, but applied towards like all the things in my reality and all of the spirit of reality, all the passion. And so for me, when I looked at it from being a skeptic and being that scientist of spirit, what really helped me understand what spirituality was and embrace it and be open my mind to it, open those doors, was looking at it from the hemisphere brain hemispheres, in that the left brain is the science, the logic, the rational, the linear. And then I realized that it was the right brain, the creative, the irrational, the nonlinear. That's spirituality. It's the things that opens up our imagination to what we can't see with our eyes, that allow us to grasp or search for spirit. And that's when I come from the science perspective. That's how I was able to like open and learn and educate myself on like what is spirituality to me. And then from there, then it like all the creativity can finally play, and then you can open up to guides and angels. Like all of that stuff from a skeptical perspective is woo-woo, because it's not science. You can't see it with your eyes. And so that's how I was able to really like come at it from that like scientific approach to openly like understand and like love spirit and faith and all of that beautiful stuff, because it's imagination to me. It's the play of imagination.
Yeah, I think, for me with spirituality, it's taken on so many different forms over my life. Because like you, I have a Jewish background also, half Hebrew. I wasn't raised in Judaism, but it was on my dad's side. So there was always kind of elements that were interwoven. Then I guess probably around third grade or so, we started going to church, and how the experiences of church was, and that went on throughout my life. And there was so many things that I was always questioning about the dogma behind it, and the labels and the boxes and the how it's supposed to work. Like, it was after just the dark night of my soul and coming through everything that I have been, and then showing up in the world, in the quantum world, in the quantum realm, in the energy medicine, and starting to see things shift from a very different perspective of moving out of that allopathic place, that traditional medicine, that linear way of doing things, into this, like you say, it's healing is nonlinear, right? I say that too. Moving into this other way of literally unpacking the things that I am not, but in unpacking the things that I'm not is when I started bringing me closer to my own spiritual roots. And when I had the opportunity to start working with a shaman, my shaman, who was originally a clinical psychologist or psychiatrist, actually, from years ago, who moved into shamanism, is when my world really just went, and things started changing so much. And like Jeremy says, it's about the things that we can't see. There's the skeptics out there, but it's once we move out of that place of skepticism into the boundless of the potentials of connecting to these other energetic frequencies, of the things that are actually impacting us. And I started working on these actual past life traumas. I mean, prior to my shaman, I'm like, I'm not so sure about this crazy stuff. But then going through these protocols and going through these very mapped out ways of connecting with these huge things that have been impacting me throughout my life. And it started showing me so many different realms of myself, of the world, of what the world actually is. Everything from energetic cords, like curses and hexes. You start thinking like a witch with a hat on, and like curses and hexes or whatever. But like they're things, or there are intentions that we put out into the world, and the level of a curse or a hex has to do with the intention behind it, right? And it's how we actually impact those around us and what sticks. It's like throwing slime on somebody, and the slime, you can't ever get rid of it, right? And what does that start doing to you, right? And then earthbound spirits, and I mean angels, like you're talking about the angels, Jeremy, like there's the ascended masters. There's so many other elements of spirituality that isn't dogmatic. It's not church. It's not confined in a box or anything like that. And it's opening my mind to something that at one point was that of fairy tales, and embracing it and allowing this other level in to really open my eyes and show me the profound nature in the duality of where I am in a human body, to even like comprehend like the profound nature of what this all is. It's so much more. It's so much more than anything I ever gleaned. And, you know, not that church is bad. Church isn't bad. It's a good framework for a lot of people. But getting out of the framework and breaking the paradigms of what I was taught to think and believe and know into this whole other place, like that's been, it's been amazing. It's been beautiful. It's been terrifying. Like you see those jokey memes of somebody like sweating under the blankets, like, oh my God, like, you know, the spiritual awakening. Like I had those too. Like I'm not going to make it through the night when the veils of reality of existence like are pulled back, and I'm like, where did I just wake up? You know, so it's huge. It's there's so much to it.
Yeah. Anyone else have anything to add on to that?
Well, Paulus, you know, I love that you had brought up the fact about like intention and even the more woo aspects of the spirituality of like curses and hexes and spell work and all, you know, those type of things. And, you know, I think for me, what originally had shied me away from spirituality as a whole to begin with was that fear of it being something that was going to be indoctrinated, or that fear of judgment of, you know, I have this belief in, like, let's say, for example, angels, and then, but I don't have this belief in something else. Almost this fear of like, well, it isn't by the book, or it isn't led or upheld by a doctrinated force. And, you know, for me, once I had learned that spirituality embodies all of these things, right? And it really comes down to, as you had said, like intention and energy and frequency and anything that can essentially just tap into the quantum field. It made me realize that this was my purpose and my passion, and this is what I had lived for. And it excited me because, you know, for me, I feel as though I'm a very intentional person. I try to, there are moments that, you know, whatever, we get caught up in the day and, you know, things get put by the wayside and I'm not living moment to moment within an intentional action. But even from the perspective of what I'm wearing today, so I have yellow on, which stimulates my solar plexus, and I have my mala that was given to me by, it was handmade actually in a different country by a shaman specifically for me. And, you know, being able to be so intentional within my actions has really helped me to feel more comfortable within my spirituality and expand that into levels that people, I feel like, don't necessarily take into perspective or into play, of being able to be so intentional of, hey, the colors that I'm wearing are stimulating and encouraging me through these different aspects. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people could benefit more from, because, you know, that's what, to me anyway, spirituality is supposed to be. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be expansive. It's, you know, challenging the normal. It's taking an idea and putting your own ideas behind it and compiling all sorts of other ideas and creating something new that can serve other people throughout the rest of the world.
I totally agree with that.
Yes. And I wanted to like go back to something that Paula said, because at the Conscious Leadership Network, it's all about kind of tearing down those silos between the science and the spirituality and bringing them together into one space and one vision of that unity. And for how I want to formulate this next question, it kind of brings into that spirituality sense of, so I'll go into my personal story with this, like in terms of when I was growing up, authority was parental, it was teachers, and it was people telling me what to do. And so I, being this intelligent, sensitive child, had this like inner rebellion against authority, but also had to be a good child and be a good boy and follow authority. So that inner game of authority, or that there was a tussle of authority. And then fast forward to authority and spirituality, I think, one learns when they really dive into this. The search for spirit is the search for God, if we want to use that word, right? And I want to hear your guys' takes on where that line is, because we are redefining authority with the Conscious Leadership Network, with Authority Establishment. It is a place for rebels and thought leaders and people that don't fit into a box. And with spirituality, to me, it's about becoming one with God and really claiming an authority on that level of reality that nothing and no one has power over you. So I'm curious where you guys see spirituality, God, and authority in your life, and how you navigate that terrain for how you express your authority and how you stand in it. Start with Palace again.
Palace, you're on mute.
She's muted.
I have people working on my house today, and they've been banging on my roof right above me. Sorry. So I was saying, there's so many ways to kind of think about that, and that I can respond to it. And like this past week, these last 3 days, I just got out of some really deep soul detective training with Dr. Barbara Stone. And, when we're talking about God and we're talking about spirituality, my comprehension and connection to all of this is that I'm way more, where before in my life I'd be like, shy away from talking about anything spiritually based.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the political scene if you're going to talk about spirituality. But after going through this course and where I'm at and the work I've been doing, I'm feeling so much more confident in even talking about the woo aspects of spirituality, because it's what is actually real. It's not like, they talk about quantum medicine and it being like not real medicine, because it's not something that you can repeat with the scientific method, right? Same thing with spirituality. If it doesn't or with religion, it doesn't kind of fit into a box of how you define that thing. But the work that I've been doing is breaking the mold of every single box, every construct, every framework, every way of thinking about it, to taking it to that crystalline place, right? The crystalline being of who we are, of what everything is. And for my authority around spirituality now, it's that I kind of don't give a shit what people think about what I think, because I know what is right and I know what is true. I know that that we can actually connect with angels. I know how to energetically do that with muscle testing. I know how to, I know that that the energetic frequencies out there aren't just frequencies, that there's entities. I know that these big bad nightmares that we have in these movies that we portray, all this scary stuff, like that stuff is part of the dimensions that impact us. Like it's not just a creative thought. We're bringing into our reality what's already there, but in a defined form. And the deeper I go with the shamanic work, with my shaman, the deeper I go with this soul detective work, with this shamanic training that is part of this, I'm like, guys, like the game is on. Like we're not waiting for life to happen. If you're not aware that life is happening, it's sucking the life out of you. Like if you're not aware of what's going on, then there's cracks in your energy frequencies. There's cracks in your mental state. Like if there's a crack in anywhere in your frequency, in who you are, being sick, being traumatized, being negative, those are spaces for these beings to come in and take hold. That's where these energetic cords can come in and connect to your heart or connect to your solar plexus by whatever, and start literally like we talk about energy vampires and we don't, oh, you know, this person's an energy vampire and I don't want them in my world. They kind of use that as a flippant term, at least I have. But the work that I'm doing, I'm like, it's an actual thing. Like the vampiric state is they are taking my energy. There's a crack in me if that is able to suck that energy from me. But that means that there's big cracks in them for them to be in that vacuum, that type of vacuum state, right? And so my, you know, spirituality in my life and connection to God and my authority around that is that bring it, you know, like the world overall is asleep. The world is getting kicked in the teeth day after day after day because it's mythology. Like, oh, there's the quoting, but it's mythology, right? It's mythology, or it's a fairy tale, or you can only get to God through a priest or a pastor or whoever. Like, that's not it. Like, we're never removed from God. We only remove ourselves from God when we choose to put that block up, or when we've allowed these cracks over time to impede our recognition of our connection to God. We're never disconnected, like, ever, right? And it's a good thing to be able to get out there and talk about these things. And if people resonate with it and they connect and they start to wake up into their own life and their own divinity and their own spirituality, like, it's not a debate about who we are and what we're here for. We're here as divine love. We're here for joy. We're not here to be broken. We're not here to have wars. We're not here to have all of these things. Like, it's, people have we've separated ourselves from our own divine nature from a variety, so many things. Like, there's, you know, Mallory, we could deep dive into why.
We're gonna go real deep on that one.
Right? It's a rabbit hole. But I think that we are at a point in time in Earth's history that we've hit that tipping point of not acknowledging our divinity and not acknowledging our collective nature of that we are one. Like, we might show up as individuals here in this world, but we are all one. And when we hurt, if I hurt Xavier, I'm hurting Jeremy. If I hurt Jeremy, I'm hurting Mallory. If I hurt myself, I'm hurting somebody in the Philippines. Like, there is an impact. You know, if you go scientifically, it's the butterfly effect, right? But it's, you know, it's so important. And people have, the world overall, especially Western cultures, Westerns most specifically, where they're asleep. We've walked away. We've walked away for whatever reasons. I mean, there's a blend of science and spirituality that's absolutely important, but the division of science and spirituality, it's like put us into a dark ages, you know, into the dark ages. And those who are considered light workers, we know that right now, the age that we're in, we're moving, it feels like the biggest age of chaos maybe that we could ever imagine. But we're actually moving out of an age of chaos, and we're watching the constructs of everything that we've seen that can't be sustained because it's based on lies. It's not based on the reality of things. We're watching it crumble, and that for our society and our world of duality, this has to happen for us to move through the age of chaos and into the age of enlightenment and truth. It's really into the age of truth, right? And for those of us that connect to truth, we're going to be the ones that thrive and keep going and ascending in our spiritual journeys. Like, we are not separate from that. Like, if people want to deny that, they're going to be stuck in the muck in the trenches. Like, there's just no debate about it. You know, they can debate all they want, but the reality is that we are, and this is even a label, like spiritual beings having a human experience, right? But then take the label off of spiritual and back a step and back, what are we? Like, that spiritual label is the closest thing that I can get in, like, my duality nature of, like, that divine place. But everybody is that. And for our world to move forward, for our world to heal, for our world to even recognize the core human trauma, we have to wake up and we have to move back into this other state of awareness. Right? Everybody's been asleep. I mean, it's the movie The Matrix, for people that watch it. Like, that's such a paradigm for what the quantum realm is, but also you can look at the matrix and being plugged in as a battery to what's going on with the majority of Western culture. Like, we're asleep and we don't even realize all the stuff that's been plugged into us and is putting code into how we think, how we feel, how we're not even showing up in life. There's just so much to it. So that's a long diatribe. Somebody else.
Awesome. Mallory, what about you in terms of the balancing of God, authority, and your spirituality?
So honestly, take what I say with a grain of salt, but I don't specifically identify with a definable God, if that makes sense. I identify with different entities and beings and the energies and frequencies and all of the things that consist and make up our quantum reality, but I don't actually identify with a specific God. So for me, it's more of aligning yourself with the universe and essentially becoming your own God. And it's not from a perspective of some may say that a statement like that could be very blasphemous, right? But it's more of a perspective of identifying who we are to true nature, being able to tap into the higher principles of quantum physics, quantum mechanics, our entire realm that we have, and being able to utilize the different energies, the forces, the entities, the beings, the all of the things that consist and make this up, to be able to be your own, if that makes any sense.
To you then?
So to me, spirit is our never-ending essence. So ultimately, based on my beliefs, our spirit will exist onward somewhere else, doing something else, whether that's like reincarnation, whether that's moving into a different going up in the chain of dimensional reality. It can vary. So for example, for me, I'm primarily working very hard to ensure that I am ascending as rapidly as possible so that I don't reincarnate, because I would not like to revisit this planet. But ultimately that to me is what spirit is our essence that makes up our being, right? So like, when we die, for example, we have the tendency of like, we buried our dead, right? And I don't at all believe that by going and meeting at the graveside that means that that's where I'm seeing that individual. And I actually have personal experiences around that. My sister had died at a very young age, and I actually interact with her spirit on a very regular basis. I can't tell you where her spirit is. I can't tell you how that actually occurs, but I can very definitely tell you that it does happen. And it's not only me that experiences it. I have other people in my life who have communicated to me and said, hey, is something going on? Like, it's really weird, but your sister came to me in my dream and told me this. And so I just wanted to reach out, where like, there's all these really crazy parallels of proving essentially that this interwoven connection exists. And so that's why I say that's why I believe that spirit is your essence. It's hard to define other than it being your unique frequency of energy that is able to be, you can change it, right? It's fluid, it's nonlinear, it's not defined. It can alternate, but it essentially exists of all of your past, present, and future existences on this timeline and any and all other timelines that can exist within time and space, because quantum reality tells us that you can have infinite existences, if that makes sense. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, because I can go really deep down the rabbit hole here, but ultimately that's where I feel spirit exists for me, and that's why I don't specifically identify with one specific deity or God or entity. And I essentially am very fluid and work with a lot of them. And circling back through what Paulus had said, as far as like, we're going through this period of time of chaos, and we're seeing a lot of destruction right now. And I wanted to tie in about how to me, within fearless authority and being and establishing your authority, first and foremost, for me to make that statement of, I believe that we should come to terms with our own godhood and or goddess or whatever you want to call that, right? So first and foremost, for me, that's a very bold statement, and is something that truly embodies fearless authority, because that's something that plenty of people can circle back and say, what the hell are you talking about? Or that's blasphemous, or you're nuts, or whatever. And honestly, I could care less what people think about that, because we're in a trivial time right now where we're going through this chaos, and in order for us to have new creation, we have to destruct. And I think that that's one of the things that a lot of us are struggling with right now, is like, we're all like, oh gosh, everything is collapsing. We've got coronavirus. We've got, our society is breaking apart. We've got people losing their jobs. We have people changing from a physical job into a virtual state. We have all these different changes, and, it all has to destroy in order to rebuild at the magnitude that it actually has to occur at, in order for humanity to grow and expand and ascend into the space that we're needing to be in, if that makes sense.
Love it. Xavier, anything that you want to add to this question?
Well, after observing and feeling everyone's expression, I have to say thank you to all of you, because you all speak the truth. And if I could add anything, I would only begin by saying these two words: levels and layers.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is that there are always continuing to be different levels of understanding, levels of expression, levels, right? And within those levels, us as the spiritual beings having a temporary experience here on earth, we have these layers that we can continue, like an onion, we can continue to peel back those layers of our own understanding. Because I told my wife this morning, she was, lamenting about some things happening in our, family situation. And I responded with, for we all each have our journey before us. Mm-hmm. And would you not agree with me that every single human among the big earth, the one that we all share, I call that the big world, we all have our own individual worlds, correct?
Very definitely.
Yeah.
So here I am thinking, wow, when I'm going back into the chronicles of my own life and just kind of taking my spirit out and just kind of turning around and looking back at some of the things that I did based on the beliefs that were fed to me, mm-hmm. as opposed to what I decided for myself. Mm. I really began to realize the pattern that could have developed had I stuck and stayed on that road. But as I got older, because I always considered myself a question asker. Now, my grandfather, he's the pastor. He stood 6'5" and didn't use words. He used facial expressions. So when he gave you a look, you knew exactly what he needed from you.
Is that where you get yours from?
I believe so. Right?
Quite awesome, isn't it?
So I'm like, I think I was one of like a bunch of cousins. I think I was the only one that did not get a whooping by my grandfather, because I used the lessons that I saw other people go through as my own. Mm-hmm. And so I knew kind of to hold my tongue, but I still ask questions on the inside. I'm like, wait, maybe I'll just wait till I'm not physically close to him before I ask these questions. But as I got older, I began to find my own path within the big world and continued to test my theories against how my life was showing up. So for me, it's always got to be the levels. You have to be open and willing to peel back some of those layers and question your own beliefs, even if they challenge you, because that is where your growth comes from.
Yes.
So for me, I love the notion of levels and layers, and I like to believe that I'm at that frequency now where I can have a belief and I don't need anyone to validate it for me.
Yeah, love it.
So yeah, I can open a debate with you and let you say what you want to say, and it doesn't affect who I am. That is when you know you have arrived at that level, and you can only get higher, you can only get better from there, but you have to make that choice. So that's kind of where I stand. I wake up happy because today is going to be better than yesterday, all because I get to choose it. And then I go and look for evidence that it's happening. And one piece is right here, right now, with all of you. Like, isn't that amazing?
It is.
Like, we get to see and hear and express and just kind of be with each other. And you don't have to be worried about judgment and things of that nature, where as one, maybe a long time ago, you used to have to worry about, should I open my mouth and say something like this?
Yeah.
Is there a place where I can do that? Well, yes, there is. And I'm glad you asked. So yeah, this right here, these moments are something that my soul has been looking for. And now I found that alignment. And when you get to that space where you can just be free without any of the, I call it lower level energy, because that place you'll know just by looking out into the world and seeing people knee-jerk reacting all over the place. And then there's other pockets of people who are pro-acting. Huge difference in the way the people's lives turn out. If you choose to be a pro-actor or a reactor, you're going to live a different life. It just depends on which one you choose.
Yeah.
Well, and X, I love that you had said that, you're at the space where your beliefs do not require validation, because that right there to me is probably the closest to the definition of what I would say what finding individual godhood or individual goddesshood would be like, is having that formulated belief system and knowing and standing true and tall within your power and your strength, and knowing that I don't need anybody else to say yay or nay. This is how I feel. This is how I believe. This is how I embody. This is how I act based upon this.
Right.
Yes. All right. So I want to segue off of the levels and layers for our last question today. And each one of us to share someone that is struggling with their authority. We want to speak to them on one thing, one tangible or actionable or applicable thing that someone can do today, right now, to level up their authority, their fearless authority, by means of their own spirituality. And I'll lead off with Mallory on this one.
Yes, I wanted to go first anyway.
I felt it. You told me.
I'm so glad you felt it, because I was like, pick me. For me, the simplest thing that I can say to anybody who is struggling with this, and it's going to be hard. It's simple, but it's difficult. Step out of your comfort zone. We exist within these tiny little circles, these tiny little bubbles of what we've been, portrayed from our surroundings or indoctrinated by society or our belief systems based upon religion or anything like that. Do one thing day after day after day to step out of your comfort zone, and you'll push your circle a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And eventually you'll be like, wow, I don't need anybody's validation to do any of this. And that's how you can step into that fearless authority in a really simple fashion of just one little thing every single day. And it's going to be scary. You're going to be like, I don't even know what I should do, right? Who cares what it is? It doesn't matter what it is. As long as it's something that challenges you and makes you fearful, if you can step outside of that, you're challenging that nature of fear, eliminating it, and broadening your horizons from there.
Love it. X?
For me, the word that comes to mind is trust. Trust your inner being, because that is the space that knows all like I said in the beginning, we, us humans, are all a piece of the same energy that creates the worlds. And we have that piece within us. So if you can get into a space where you can trust the process, like Mallory said, what we're talking about is quite simple, not to be confused with easy. So there is that, because I'm only speaking with such authority, wink, wink, because of my own experience. And I had to go through the challenging question asking and testing of my own theories, and to see if it's what I believe is actually true. And I had to learn to trust the process. Yeah. Did I want it to happen overnight? Who doesn't, right? But I had to learn that my life is not a microwave. It's more of like a slow cooker. Would you not agree that things that are made out of a slow cooker taste so much better? Say yes.
They do. They do.
So I had made that decision that I had to trust the process. And so that's my invitation to anybody that I come along and, they decide to help me partner with them. That's one thing that I communicate to them as well.
Love it. Love it. Palace?
Yeah, I would dovetail with what Mallory says. Step out of your comfort zone, because the places that we learn are not the places that we're comfortable. It's not being an armchair referee. There's a thing I can read called The Flying Trapeze, and I think that it's just very pertinent to right now. So I'm going to read this to you guys because it summarizes fear. So it says, fear can easily disrupt our ambitions and personal growth. We often make excuses to avoid confronting our angst and apprehension, all to avoid that scary place called transition. However, the state of transition enables transformation. Did you guys hear that? The state of transition enables transformation, realignment, and progress. Transition allows us to evolve while making peace with the past and accepting the unknown future. Without transition, we would be stagnant. And here, I'll read the rest of this to you guys. Sometimes I feel that my life is a series of trapeze swings. I'm either hanging onto a trapeze bar swinging along, or for a few moments, I'm hurtling across space between the trapeze bars. Mostly, I spend my time hanging on for dear life to the trapeze bar of the moment. It carries me along a certain steady rate of swing, and I have the feeling that I'm in control. I know most of the right questions and even some of the right answers, but once in a while, as I'm merrily, or not so merrily, swinging along, I look ahead of me into the distance, and what do I see? I see another trapeze bar looking at me. It's empty, and I know in that place, in me that knows, that this new bar has my name on it. It is my next step, my growth, my aliveness coming to get me. In my heart of hearts, I know that for me to grow, I must release my grip on the present well-known bar to move to the new one. Each time it happens, I hope and know I pray that I won't have to grab the new one. But in my knowing place, I know that I must totally release my grasp on the old bar. And for some moments in time, I must hurtle across the space before I can grab the new bar. Each time I do this, I am filled with terror. It doesn't matter that in all my previous hurdles, I have always made it. Even each time I am afraid I will miss, that I will be crushed on unseen rocks in the bottomless basin between the bars. But I do it anyway. I must. Perhaps this is the essence of what the mystics call faith. No guarantees, no net, no insurance, but we do it anyway, because hanging on to that old bar is no longer an option. And so for what seems to be an eternity, but actually lasts a microsecond, I soar across the dark void called the past is over and the future is not yet here. It's called a transition. I have come to believe that it's the only place that real change occurs. I have a sneaking suspicion that the transition zone is the only real thing, and that the bars are the illusions we dream up to not notice the void. Yes, with all the fear that can accompany transitions, they are still the most vibrant, growth-filled, passionate moments in our lives. And so transformation of fear may have nothing to do with making fear go away, but rather with giving ourselves permission to hang out in the transition zone between the trapeze bars, allowing ourselves to dwell on the only place where change really happens. It can be terrifying and it can also be enlightening. Hurtling through the void, we just may learn to fly. And that excerpt is from Warriors of the Heart by Danon Perry. And I could have used my own words, but I really wanted to use those words because I felt that it was just completely applicable to what we're discussing right now, to the Conscious Leadership Network, just to the frequency where we all are. So that's my share.
Love it. So I'll kind of close out with my thought on this question, because I'm putting myself into the shoes of someone into that space that is like second guessing their own authority and skeptical of their own authority, and where I go and where I invite people to play with us in the Conscious Leadership Network on this this prompt or invitation, like Xavier said, is to play in the characters here. So for me, when I think about where I was at, there was this people pleaser that avoided the line between confidence and arrogance. And that was my excuse for really hanging back on my word of like sharing my bold authority with people. Was I didn't want to appear arrogant, and I was afraid of that confidence because of that, because I didn't know where that line was. And so my playful invitation to those that want to level up with this is I challenge you to show up in the Conscious Leadership Network on the extreme of arrogance. I want you to share your idea, your message, your inner authority, your whatever that is to you. I want you to go over the line. I want you to come in as arrogant as you want, and just feel the extreme on that side, so that you understand what that balance is. And so have fun with that. And that's my kind of like tangible idea to really, like, I agree, facing your fears, and this might be a fear, but for me, that would be what I would tell my younger self, is to play with that line and not be afraid to show up in arrogance of what you know, because you might be surprised at how confident it actually is. So we were at an hour, and so I wanted to keep it at that framework. Xavier, do you have anything to add on to that?
Can I just share one thing? It's just because my power word right now is just a download is, if you come here, be prepared to have some fun.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I'm going to help you. We are going to help you, in the words of Andre 3000, vibrate, vibrate higher.
I love it.
Love it. Vibrate higher.
Yep.
Yes.
That's great.
We'll leave it at that. Vibrate higher. Check us out. The invitation will be below in one of the videos that you're watching this at. The Conscious Leadership Network, open right now. And make sure to check out all of our tribes that we've got going on, all of our courses, all of the events, and everything that's electrifying the Conscious Leadership Network right now. And as for myself, Palace, Mallory, Xavier, want to thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next month for the next pillar of fearless authority and a holistic life.